Thank you, Shailesh. Kia ora, everyone. Now, today we are back again. Been a long time, but we were just thinking of giving another session over here. And we have Shailesh once again with us today. Thank you, Shailesh, for joining. And today's session is a snapshot of what happened. It's a debrief session, as we call it, about how the elections went and how each party performed. And then I just want very quickly your views about what do you think the potential coalition will look like, right? So first of all, let me welcome you once again.
Yes, no, thank you so much, Sheerali, for once again doing this episode. And kia ora, everyone. Yes, it has been an election year and it has been a very happening year. So it's really good to be back and to actually just reflect on how the election went and what really it means for our nation, for the direction of our nation. Because these are the leaders who fought for us, for
Yep.
all of us. And then we need to know now how have they performed just from a layman's point of view, but also from a point of view of our country, where they are going to be taking us towards an area where we are in such a situation currently, as you know, Sheerali. Everybody has been talking about the talk of the town has been the economy, has been the cost of
Yep.
living, has been the crime, has been all sorts of things. But most importantly, how are we performing when it comes to other countries? Because everybody is sailing in the same boat of COVID,
Yep.
post-COVID. But we did very well. But then these leaders who are now having this after completion of election, we will reflect one by one and happy to talk about it. Happy to talk about all the political parties in my view, in my
Yep.
way, what happened to these people really.
The
Yeah.
elections for me wasn't a big surprise. I think it was something which we were expecting. It's not a very clear majority for national, but we were expecting that there would be some kind of they will have they'll have more seats, but
Mm.
Labor's dip wasn't very surprising, and that's something which we had discussed in a previous analysis,
Yes.
that this might be the trend and that's what the people seem to have voted for. Now,
Mhm.
would you be able to share with us, how, what in your opinion, how do the parties perform, like facts and figures?
Yeah, let's talk about the ruling party, which is currently the Labour Party. Start with that because people were having lots of expectations, and they were having lots of expectation from their point of view to continue the good work that their predecessors has done, or whatever the work that they carried out, whether it was good, bad, but whatever they had done, they had put all the hard yards and they had to continue that. So that was a big question for the ruling party. And when it comes to the results that we saw on the ground, and when we saw the campaign that they did, I personally felt, in my view, was not up to the mark. The campaign was started late. Now there are multiple reasons for that. The flood started when the new Prime Minister Chris Hipkins came in. He was faced with floods. That was the starting as a minister. So that's definitely was not in the campaign mode. So I personally feel that that was one of the things that happened to him. So the campaign was back into a back burner kind of thing. So they did not really put out the policies early. They did not do anything in that regard. So it was a challenge for them. But then they also did not connect or positives what they had said or what they have done in the last 6 years. They were not able to communicate in that same articulate fashion as what last time in 2020 elections it was communicated. So we saw a lot of lack of connection between the people and the political party Labour. That was one of my observations in that scenario. So in terms of what I feel that they lacked was the campaign and the policies that were supposed to be. They did some of the good works, but they were not able to present it. They did some of the owning the responsibility of some of the policies that didn't work, but then again that was not presented very well. So I personally feel even the debacle of some of the ministers going one after the other was also, I personally felt the leadership lacked in handling those ministers gone as well. But the most important thing was the policies that they came up with, particularly the GST policy. Particularly, people were expecting that there will be tax, there will be rich people will be taxed, or high income earners will be taxed, rather than I call it rich people, because people have got a misconception of rich people taxed and rich people not taxed. So this is something I didn't agree with that concept of the leader, that it was not supposed to be taxed, but it is people's view was to be taxed. And so they did not live up to the expectations of the people. I personally felt it would have been good if the capital gain tax, wealth tax, everything would have come in and things would have been a little different, because then people would have said that, yes, they are taking the responsibility, but they are taking also the ownership of making it right or making it perfect for the moment that they are looking for. That was my observation with the Labour Party, and non-handling, lack of leadership, lack of presentation in terms of and connection, lack of connections was there. All these things, if you contrastly say to the another major political party, which is the National Party, they actually picked on all of these shortcomings of Labour, where they were able to connect, they were able to present, they were able to, even whether that is happening or not, either whether they will be doable or not, the policies were not had lots of things to be desired, whether it will work or it won't work. But still, the presentation, what they did was absolutely connected with the people. And that's something was lacking. So whatever loss was or whatever they lacked, the current government, Labour, was picked up by National very well in that sense. But other thing I wanted to touch on some of the smaller parties, as you mentioned before, this was always going to be an expected kind of a result where we were seeing that lots of smaller parties came up, not just came up, but they rose to that occasion in such a fashion that they became like one of the major parties, basically. If you look at ACT was at
Maori party. I think for me, the Maori party was a big,
yeah.
not a surprise, but a big,
Hmm.
feel like a phoenix they have risen, like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they were gone last election, but they came up with flying colors. Now I wanted to, yeah. So Greens and ACT went on to the one of the major that they almost one third of the seats where they were taking basically. So if you look at from that 14 seats and now the result 11 seats and 14 seats is a huge kind of a jump from nowhere. Particularly ACT was nothing, 0 or 1 only, and they rose to 11. So that's a big jump. Greens, they were already there, 9, 8, 10 seats, but now they moved to 14, which is great. I mean, so that's something we saw a big change in the mindset of the people. So what happened or what really went wrong or right, it's not about that. It's about the people's expectation from every single major political party, that everybody was looking for something for them during this challenging time. And that was one of the things that everybody was looking for, some party will help them, and they voted everyone basically. So that was a good democratic process in a way, if we look at it from a democracy point of view. And coalition is nothing wrong in it. I personally feel coalition is always good, because then you have got voices that people think that they are not heard, they can be heard, and they can be really made difference to the nation rather than political parties, because every political party stand for some or the other thing, right, Sheerali? So I think that was one of the major. But yes, you are right, spot on, that NZ First, Winston Peters, came back into an absolute challenging, but also absolutely surprise for everyone. And he's now sitting in a situation where he's going to be probably becoming like once again 2017 repeat of. We also mentioned that in our previous episodes that he could be sitting in that similar situation where all the major political parties have to depend on him, on his decision. But again, it's yet to be seen. We are still waiting for the special votes to be counted on the 2nd of November and 3rd of November. We will come to know. But we'll talk about that. But in terms of Greens, I think they did superbly well. They announced the policies of tax policies quite early, and their tax policies were accepted by the people. They were also, if you look at from that, if you look at from an angle of social economic policies and tax policies, Greens were really upfront and very starting. At the very early campaign, they did that and they got the results quite remarkably well. And if you look at ACT was quite very extreme at times, people thought, whether it was their policy of crime, whether it was their policy of wasteful spending, whether it was policies of bringing back the money or cutting jobs wherever there is wasteful that they think is wasteful. But again, that was a challenge for the people to understand and absorb. And then they had a uncertain feeling about ACT, that whether our jobs will go or not. So initially we saw ACT jumping, but then after that we saw ACT coming down. Compared to Green, they came down quite drastically. And that was one of the uncertain things that people thought about ACT Party. Whereas for National and Labour, they had a complacency factor and they had a status quo factor. But Labour did very badly, 50%, almost 50% of their MPs gone. That's a real shame. But we will see what happens during the special votes, how much they regain out of that, and how much they think that they have done damage to their own self to move forward. So that will be an interesting part to see. But I think National gained momentum, but again, their tax policies are yet to be desired and yet to be seen whether it will work. But also overseas and policies about building our nation or making the economy strong, which they are thriving on. Economy strong has to be first and foremost. People are suffering currently. And they say that when the economy is strong, people will not suffer. But I think the need of the hour is people are suffering, basically. Economy could be a factor, but economy is not the only factor. There are COVID factor which came. COVID was not an economy factor. It was just a factor that came for everyone. And,
Right.
everyone's economy has gone down. So there is no question about that economy is not good about every country. But that's not the priority for, according to me, in terms of the government's priorities. I think they should be putting more into efforts of how people are struggling and how they can come out of that struggle. And if they do that, it will be good. Policies for what they are going to do in the first 100 days is yet to be seen. But again, that we will come back and see who is the government and who is going to run the country for us for the next 3 years. And that's
Right.
going to be interesting. But I feel Greens did superbly well with, I love their tax policies. I love their dental policy, which is the need of the hour. So now this is what I call it a little bit of reformative decisions or bold decisions. When you are in down or when you don't have economy is good, yet if you are making that bold decisions of cutting tax and paying the money for that healthcare, that means you are really caring for the nation and then
For the people, yeah.
the people, and you can be an example for the world that you can still do it irrespective of your income, because ultimately the money is coming from a tax. It's not coming from anywhere imaginary. Okay, so
Right.
which is I thought that they did superbly well in that area. In terms of what labor's policies were there, they were all doing very good at one point. But when they back down on tax policies, when they back down on dental and health policies, that's where I thought that they made a little bit of error of judgment that people will still tolerate. People will not tolerate if they don't need health services, if they don't get dental services, if they don't get money tax policies, they are not going to be happy about it. I think that's was the downfall of labor, I personally felt. And of course, handling characterization. And this campaign we saw, Sheerali, is it was more like a personal scoring points of individual rather than how can you talk about policies? How can your policy is better than me? We should have been discussion on that rather than they should be discussing on, oh, you did this, you did that, we inherited this, we inherited that, which is fine. We have already done 6 years. You have been 3 years, COVID was the thing. So, but how did you present that is more important. What did people thought? If you don't own up, then obviously people will think that you don't want to talk about it. But if you own up and talk to a large extent, then I think the political parties will score better if they are more transparent. That's what I think,
Yeah,
Shirali.
I think that is true. And couple of things which you said about, national doing a good campaign, because it is all about PR after all. And I
Absolutely.
remember here Luxon was actually congratulating and talking about his PR manager, the
Mm.
campaign manager. He was really appreciating him at the end of
Yeah.
the day. And what also stood out for me was the emergence of some young leaders. If I from the memory, if I recall, Auckland Central
Mm.
has been won by Green Party, and the
Yeah.
woman, she's very young, a woman who has won that. And then there was the youngest
Mm.
MP ever, I think a 21-year-old or something from the Maori Party.
Yes, Hamilton. Yeah.
So I think it was like really, very good to see those youngsters coming in through, and
Absolutely.
something very that was very, doesn't matter from which party they were, but I think the emergence of young people into politics was something very good to see. Yeah,
It,
and the last, let me just wind up this session by asking you one.
mm.
I'm going to make you into an astrologer kind of a person now. And I just want to know, like,
My
we
two
know
cents.
that the talks are about coalitions, but it will be a coalition for sure.
Yeah.
And we are probably maybe looking at National Act and I don't know, possibly NZ first. But it
Mm.
depends on the special votes, as you said, of the next week.
Yeah.
What is your take on the
Yeah.
coalition thing? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, it is going to be very interesting, and the history and the predictions that people have been talking about, and they say that normally in the special votes, the major party, particularly the left parties, they actually get the vote. So Greens will be benefited with some of the seats, or even NZ First, Winston Peters might be benefited as well with that, and so as Labour could be benefited with that. If you look at it, Shirali, there are 4 electorate seats where Labour is behind, but not with a margin of big margin. So which means they can make up the ground that they are behind at the moment. And those 4 electorate seats can come back to Labour, which is predominantly Labour seats like Mount Roskill here in Auckland, Mount Albert, which is a Prime Minister's seat, which is also, she's only 100 votes ahead. So it's a challenge as well. And then West Auckland, I think Theatre to South, which is Phil Tyford's, and the other one was Debra Russell in New Lynn. So these are 4 electorates, according to, in my mind, could be retained by Labour. And if they get retained, then obviously National or ACT or someone will lose if they get. Okay. Now that will change the whole complexion. That means,
There's a by-election as well, if I remember right.
yeah, but that won't affect much in Hamilton
Okay.
because what is happening, Shirali, they are at the moment on 61 at the border of 61 seats. Now, if one seat goes, that means even that Hamilton they won, it's not going to make a difference, because one seat goes, that means someone will win and someone will get that seat. That means Winston will be back, or he will be back in the game, basically. Who he will support is up to him. I can't predict that, but I think what National and ACT wants, even though they did lots of personal characterization in the campaign with each other, they still have to come together if they want to keep Labour out of it. And that's their goal, is to keep Labour out of it, rather than, join Winston or not join Winston. And to make Labour out of it, they have to join Winston. Then there are no options. Or they can go with Green, to be in my view, and they can just discard completely ACT and NZ First. They can still make it, but whether they will do it is a big question. So my predictions is they will try to work with Winston, and even though they have got lots of challenges with him, it's not that they haven't worked with them before, but this time around it's going to be a little bit different. We're working with Winston, and so that's challenges are there. But I personally feel that for the nation, is it good? with this coalition or not is $1 million question. And I remember the time when Jenny Shipley, Nationals, she had to go within 9 months or 9 months, she has to leave the parliament office after becoming the prime minister. So I hope it doesn't come to that. It will be disadvantage to the nation, to the country. So they will have to work around that situation, but we will see lots of anxiety and uncertainty in lots of areas where we don't want at this moment, particularly unemployment, particularly jobs cuts we don't want, particularly we want the well-being of the people to be taken care of. We want the housing to be issued and solved. So coalition point of view, see, if you look at the numbers point of, this is just hypothetical, I'm saying, Sheerali, for the listeners, probably they might be thinking, oh, is it possible still like that kind of scenario? If you look at Labor and Greens at the moment are 34 and 14, which is 48. And then if you add Maori 4, it becomes 52. So they are way ahead of 61. They need 9. Okay. But with the special votes, if they gain 4 seats, 2 seats, things could change. National will lose those 2 seats or 3 seats if they gain, or ACT will lose and if they Greens gain. That's a big question. So in all probability, if there is a tie once again, or if there is a Winston Peters has to decide, he will be the another major party to go with anyone, whether National ACT or whether Labour Green and Maori, basically. Then that could be a scenario as well. But as you know, and I know that in the public, even though Chris Hipkins has said, I don't want to work with Winston, Winston hasn't said that I don't want to work with.
Politics is, people change overnight, so.
Exactly, exactly. So coalition, it is definitely going to be a coalition, whether two-party coalition or three-party coalition, it is going to be a coalition. So we are going to witness for the next 3 years a coalition. But again, as I said, individual, everybody, voters have voted individual candidates and individual political parties so that they wanted what they wanted. That's why we saw National or Labour did not see the Auckland city, the heart of the city. Still, no major party did not win. Who won? Greens won. Chloe Swarbrick won, youngest. I think she's a good prime minister material as well, according to me, if you ask me. But better than at this point. But we'll see what happens in the coming formation of the government. So as I was telling is, this coalition is inevitable, two-party or three-party. But also it gives an opportunity for Chloe Swarbrick and individuals, that 21-year-old you said about the Hamilton, and then there are certain people in National and ACT, new entrants, which will give them an opportunity for literally excel themselves and prove that this country is a democratic country, but this country, nation, our nation is also needs all these intelligent and intellect people to take forward and move forward our country. So it's good that we have got intelligent people standing as a candidate and then winning also that this election, which is going to be interesting to see. So in my view, Sheerali, if I want to sum it up, coalition is inevitable. Now, whether that coalition will be Winston, Labour, Green, or Tea Party Maori, or whether it is Winston, National, and ACT, ultimately. So this is something is going to be, and the special votes, as I said, it's 20%, which is quite high, which means things can change quite drastically, dramatically.
Things can change, yeah.
Things can change
Absolutely.
dramatically. So with that, I think it's going to be like just sitting there and watching with anxiety and uncertainty.
Well, yeah, it's going to be more anxiety. Yes, you are absolutely right. We all want the nation first. That's what we've been talking about in the policy analysis as well. And you rightly said, if we have coalition, it's a good in a way that everybody's voice is heard.
Yeah.
But we will have to wait and see whether it's going to be that, or is it going to be too many cooks spoil the broth. So
Exactly.
we will
That's
just have to,
the term.
we will have to wait and watch for that.
I think that is
Thank you, Shailesh. I think that
yeah.
was very well analyzed and, like a very balanced analysis of what's going to happen. And once the government does get formed and we do have a result, we will come back with another episode and
Yeah.
do an analysis of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, listeners, to all this. We have been bringing that, and Sheerali has been very good in asking those articulate questions. But also, it's good to have our yarn about our own nation. And if we don't converse, if we don't talk, if we don't spread the awareness, then we are the ones who are suffering, and we are the ones who will be, disappointed with our own country. We don't want to do that. So we'll keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Sheerali, for keeping up this
Thank you. Thank you,
work.
Shailesh.
And
Thank you very much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye for now.